third and final video on dispersion. If you've not yet watched the first two videos, I encourage you strongly to go back and watch those first two videos before this third one. You'll need to be able to calculate the standard deviation of a particular data set before you can apply these new measures of dispersion that we'll be discussing in this particular video, which are going to include standard error and coefficient of variation. Now, let's think about standard deviation and standard error and make some comparisons, because we've got all these different measures of dispersion and we're starting to potentially get confused about when to use each. Now, standard deviation is going to be the standard by which we describe how much variation we have in our data set when we're interested in describing how much variability we have. Standard error is slightly different because it's going to give us an estimate as far as how far our mean is from our sample compared to what the true population mean is. We're going to talk more about this later in the semester, but I feel like it's important to discuss this briefly now that we're talking about dispersion, so that way we can get an understanding of how this works as we get more comfortable with statistics and start learning about different sampling distributions. So the standard error is going to tell us, well, how good is our respective estimate of the mean compared to the true population mean? And the formula for standard error is relatively simple. It's a matter of taking the standard deviation and dividing by the square root of the sample size. We could also, in turn, take the variance, divide that by the sample size, and then take the square root. Either one is fine, but what's important to note is that the variance is always going to be larger than the standard deviation, and the standard deviation is always going to be larger than the standard error. And that's just based on how these formulas are set up. So if you're able to calculate out the variance, then you should feel comfortable calculating out the standard deviation as well as the standard error. So let's go through an example, get some practice calculating standard deviation, standard error, and variance, and how to report this when we are doing so with our data. So let's say that we're studying lionfish on a coral reef and we're interested in their impact on the ecosystem. We want to see how many fish they're eating over a particular study period. So we go out, we collect these lionfish, we see how many fish are in their stomachs, how many fish are they eating on the reef. And so first we need to calculate out the variance and standard deviation before we calculate the standard error. So we need to calculate out our deviations of our data from the mean. So our mean is 14.2 fish. We need to take the difference between the number of fish in the stomach and this mean for each one of our respective observations. Again, remembering we'll have some negative values and some positive values. We then need to square this deviation, so we take the values from our deviation column, we square them, and we get our values. Again, these should all be positive. We can then calculate out the sample variance by taking the summation of our squared deviations and dividing by sample size minus 1. In this particular case, our variance is 110.143. We can then calculate our standard deviation for the sample by taking the square root of our variance. Again, this is all review from the previous video. If this seems unfamiliar, go back to that previous video and rewatch that to make sure you're comfortable with calculating variance and standard deviation. We'll also, again, spend time in lecture practicing this. So our standard deviation for this sample is 10.495. Now, in order to calculate the standard error, again, this is going to be an estimate as far as how good is our ability to predict what the population mean is based on our sample mean. We're going to take the standard deviation, 10.495, and we'll divide by the square root of small n, 13 in this particular case. And we'll get our standard error of 2.911. So we can report our data in two different ways. We can report our mean fish per lionfish stomach, plus or minus the standard deviation, to get an understanding of how much variability we have in our data set. Or we can report this with the standard error, which gives us an estimate as far as how good our sample mean does in estimating the population mean. Our fifth and final means of describing variability or dispersion in our data is the coefficient of variation. And this is used in special circumstances in which we're comparing two different groups and variability in these two different groups. We use the following formula to do so, in which we'll calculate the coefficient of variation for each one of our different groups by taking the standard deviation, dividing it by the mean, and multiplying it by 100. This again reiterates the importance of being able to calculate the standard deviation. So let's think about an example to see how this works in practice. Let's say that we're a supervisor of an aquarium and we want to make sure that all of our animals are healthy. So we check the cortisol levels of these animals each month. And this is a sign of stress. The higher the cortisol levels, the more stress that these animals are going to be experiencing. But one of the tricks is the baseline of cortisol for our animals is going to vary based on species. Some animals just tend to have higher cortisol levels than others. Let's say that we're interested in a couple of our marine mammals here, sea lions and walruses, and we notice that the walruses tend to have a much higher average cortisol level than our sea lions. But we're interested not only in the average level, but how much variability there is. How much fluctuations do they have in their stress? Well, because the mean is going to be higher for our walruses, well, then it's most likely that our standard deviation is also going to be higher, which is what we observe. Now, if we use our coefficient of variation formula here to the right, we take our standard deviation, divide this by our mean, and multiply it by 100. What we see is that our coefficient of variation is actually lower from the walruses than for the sea lions. What this then shows is that even though cortisol levels are inherently higher for our walruses, there's a lot more variability in the sea lions. Maybe this is because there's more individuals in the respective exhibit, or maybe it's because their feeding is less regular. Understanding not only the central tendency but the variability in our data is going to be important, and when we're comparing across these two groups, this is going to be the most effective means in which to do so. For more information on this, check out section 4.3.5 of the text. So, just a little recap. When we're thinking about the best measures of variation, of dispersion in our data, ideally we want to use all of the data. So while the range that we talked about in the first lecture is a bit useful, it only uses a few of our data points and can be influenced by outliers. So using things like standard deviation is going to be much more valuable because we're using all of the data, and this provides us with an understanding of how much our data vary from the central tendency. Now, all of these measures of deviation, all these measures of dispersion that are going to be most useful and use all of our data are based on this principle of the least squares property. And so when we're thinking about deviations of our data from the mean, we're using the mean for a particular reason. And the reason for this is that if we are to take the sum of squares using any value besides the mean, it's going to cause our estimation of dispersion to be larger. If we were to make this value higher or lower, what we would notice is that there are either more or less observations higher than or lower than this value. This in turn is going to artificially inflate our measure of dispersion and will make our estimate of how much variation we have in our sample inaccurate. We can illustrate this with a simple data set here. Let's say that we have our observations and then we also have our mean. And then we can take our value for each observation and we can look at its deviation from the mean and square it. And then we can take our sum of squares. In this particular case, the mean is going to be 25. So we take the difference between each observation, subtract 5, square that value, and our summation is 34. Now, rather than 5, let's say that we just change it to a value that's 1 higher or 1 lower, 6 or 4. What we notice is that the differences between our values and this arbitrary value tend to increase, and our sum of squares will increase. And as we move further away from the mean, these values are going to increase, which will then artificially inflate things like variance, standard deviation, and also standard error and coefficient of variation. And so using the mean is going to be of value because the farther our value that we're using to look at differences in our observations are from the mean, the larger the difference is going to be. And also the greater the error and lower the confidence that we'll have in our respective predictions. So using this sum of squares is going to be the most appropriate way for us to measure dispersion, so we can understand how much variability we have in our data and how reliable our estimates are going to be of our population mean based on our sample. Again, we'll cover much of this in class, but you should have a basic understanding of how to make these calculations of variance, standard deviation, and standard error, and also be able to interpret what it means when these values are either larger or smaller. So this is the end of our lectures on dispersion. Some things that you should be able to do are to describe dispersion based on a histogram. If the histogram is wider or narrower, if it's more peaked or it's more flat, how does this then illustrate how much variability we have in our data? You should be able to interpret a box and whisker plot. The larger the box, the more variability that we have. And you should also be able to calculate each of these different measures of dispersion, from range and interquartile range to variance, standard deviation, standard error. Moving forward, we're going to begin to move from descriptive statistics into inferential statistics, and we'll start by discussing probability.